Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to lectionaryq. I'm Dennis Sanders, the pastor of First Christian Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. And you've been here before. You kind of know what the Q stands for, but for those who are here for the first time, that Q in the title stands for questions. Every week, I take one of the scriptures, one or two of the scriptures from the Revised Common Lectionary for the upcoming Sunday, and I ask some questions. And so this is going to be the questions for this coming Sunday, which is March 8th, 2026, which is the third Sunday in Lent. And we're going to be looking at one of my favorite texts. It is found in the Gospel of John, chapter 4, verses 5 through 42. And this is going to be kind of the next three Sundays are going to be long passages. Next Sunday is the man born blind, which is in John 9. And then after that is raising Lazarus from the dead in John 11. And all of these are, I believe, over 40 verses or close to that, between 35 and 40 verses. Which, if you're like me, being a small church, I'm the one that also makes the bulletins. It makes it a challenge to put together the bulletin when you have that many verses, and if you have another passage. But these are long passages, but they're good. They're all good stories. So I do hope that you will enjoy them, because I think that they have a lot to say. And as I said, this one is one of my favorite. It's the woman at the well. It is just an interesting story just because of the cultural factors at play. The fact that this is a man and woman. This is the fact that it's a Jew and a Samaritan. It's just kind of an interesting and fascinating story. Before we get into the questions, just a few things to be aware of. I think the first thing to talk about, and it's not included right in the passage, but you do want to share it in the sermon, because I think it's in verse 4, where it says that Jesus had to go through Samaria. And that's always an interesting play on words. It reminds me of stories when I was a kid, and my parents and myself, we drove down from Michigan, where I grew up, to central Louisiana, where my dad's side of the family is from. And at some point, you always had to go through Mississippi. So it's kind of like that. And Mississippi, it's a wonderful place to drive. It's okay to drive through in the daytime. It's not okay at night. At least back in the late 70s and early 80s, it seemed like someone didn't pay their electric bill. So if you were driving on Interstate 55, especially outside of Memphis on the way to Jackson, it was basically 4 hours of complete darkness. And just to make it even more scary was the fact that part of the country, where it's the deep south, is kudzu. And, that's the kind of weed that kind of just grows everywhere and takes over roads and signs. And it would, kind of take over poles and things, and you'd almost look like monsters. And, not fun, but that was kind of the way you had to get to central Louisiana. And so I think about that when I think about this text about going through Samaria. Jesus didn't have to go through Samaria. He could have gone around, but he went through it. And we wouldn't have this story if he didn't have to go through Samaria. But I think that there's something interesting in the fact that he had to go through, that there is something about Jesus having to do this. It's almost like Jesus with Zacchaeus, like he has to be a guest at Zacchaeus. It's kind of God just kind of barging in, not dealing around with kind of the niceties or the rules that I think we as humans sometimes tend to have, where you can't go this place, can't go that place. God doesn't seem to care. And so I just found that kind of fascinating. But anyway, this is a good text. The other thing, though, I want you all to be aware of is, and many of you may already know this, is that the point where in the passage where Jesus asked a woman to call her husband, we almost always, or at least I don't know about you, but growing up, I was always kind of, excuse me, woman, always kind of told that basically the woman was, quote unquote, living in sin. That maybe this was a woman with kind of loose morals, and she had, gotten divorced several times, and now she's just shacking up with someone. And that's probably not what happened here. There are a few things that may have happened. One is that this could have been a case of what they call levirate marriage, where like if a husband dies, then you end up marrying the brother, and so on and so on. Also, it could also be the case that it was the man, and more often, especially in those days, because women did not have the agency that they would have today, could divorce a woman for any reason. And so maybe she has been divorced many times, not because, she's, fancy free, but because she's just been kind of used by a lot of different men. Anyway, I think what it gets here is more that this is not as much about, kind of loose living, than it is really about something that for her is shameful, which, if you were in her shoes, it would be shameful as well. So just something that if you're not aware of that, you may want to be aware of. So now let's look at some of the questions that we have. Excuse me again, getting over a cold. For this story of Jesus with the woman at the well from Luke 4, verses 5 through 42. So let's look at these questions. Question number 1. Does it matter that the woman comes to get water at noon? Question number 2. What is the significance that Jesus asked for a drink of water? Question number 3 is actually harkening back to last week with Jesus and Nicodemus. In that passage in John 3, Jesus talks about being born again, and Nicodemus had a hard time understanding that. He went and looked at it literally. And this chapter, Jesus is talking about living water, and the woman looks at this as actual water that she thinks would be a great idea, because then she doesn't have to come out, especially when she does, to draw water. So the question that I have is, why do you think Jesus uses these examples, and why do you think that the people have a hard time understanding? Number 5. The woman tells the townspeople that Jesus told her everything I have ever done. What do you think that this means to her, and what do you think it means to the people in the town? And then question number 5, Jesus stays in this town for 2 days. What is the significance of that? Jesus, if you kind of look at it earlier in John 1, it talks about how some of the first disciples that he was with, he stayed with them for a time. What does that mean, that the fact of that sense of staying with someone? or I think the word that can be used is abide. What does that mean? All right. So those are the questions for this week. Are there any other questions that you have? What are the answers that you have for it? As I said, next week, as we continue in our Lenten journey, we'll be looking at John 9, I believe it's 1 through 41, which is the man born blind. That one is also a fascinating tale. It's almost, in my view, almost always comical. So, but we'll talk about that more next week. That is it really for this episode of lectionaryq. If you want to find out more, listen to some past episodes, check out lectionaryq at lectionaryq.substack.com. And also I want to, since I'm here, tell you about my main podcast, which is Church in Maine, where I interview people. It's a faith and public affairs podcast. And I hope that you would consider listening to that. It's a great chance to listen to where faith, culture, and politics intersect. My latest episode is just up, and I talked to Emily Bells, who is a reporter with Christianity Today. And it's a little bit about something that was started by the Department of Homeland Security called Operation Paris, which was and is a program that was going after basically vetted refugees that had not yet received their green cards. She tells a really good story about especially how churches really were able to stand up and do what they can to help refugees here in where I live in Minnesota. But this is also a program, something that's happening throughout the country. So it's something worth listening to, and you can check that out by going to churchandmaine, all one word, .org. That is it for this episode of lectionaryq. If you live in the Twin Cities, please consider worshiping with us at First Christian Church. We meet at St. Timothy Lutheran Church in St. Paul at 10:30 a.m. I hope that these questions will help open scripture. My apologies that this is coming a lot later than usual. It's the life of a pastor. I'm Dennis Sanders, your host, everyone. Take care. Godspeed. I'll see you next week.